My Cure fandom was huge at the time. I adored Boris Williams' play. Extremely simple, yet extremely nice. My learning was real. Not everyone mentions Boris Williams when talking about The Cure. He didn't sing. His lyrics weren't sad. He was rarely featured on albums or in print. But if you've heard the gloomy drums and pictures of you, your heart shall fall asleep. We could not sit still as exactly like Heaven played. Then you heard him through rhythm, not words. Boris avoided scandal. Never openly argued with Robert Smith. He didn't go and return like Gallup. He didn't return to the spotlight. He arrived at The Cure's most important moment and left quietly. An artist who didn't need to be central became irreplaceable after leaving everything behind. Why did a man born in Versailles, raised in silence, and constantly behind a large drum kit become The Cure's most dedicated fans drummer who gave the music its soul? What causes an artist leave a band at its peak and never return? This is Boris Peter Bransby Williams' story. The man who seldom screamed but left a deeper mark than most. Early life. Boris Peter Bransby Williams was born in Versailles, France, on April 24, 1957, far from the dark post-punk music he would eventually define. Boris's Anglo-French parents moved to Farnham, Surrey, when he was little, a calm, medieval town southwest of London. Boris's childhood was peaceful, unlike many rock musicians who faced poverty or familial strife. He was one of 7 children with 2 older brothers and 4 sisters in a busy yet peaceful home. His childhood friends remember a quiet lad with deep, contemplative eyes who listened closely. Everything sounded like a code to be deciphered. Boris heard music in water trickling, footfall on damp earth, and the rhythmic tapping of household things. He started playing drums at an early age, drawn to intricate rhythms and melodies in jazz and fusion. Its music sought finesse over force. Boris discreetly perfected his technique in the 1970s while many British adolescents embraced punk or glam rock. He didn't rush in or join rebel bands. Instead, he took a slower, more deliberate approach that would distinguish him as a drummer without popularity or excess. Creative honesty was his top priority. From little stages in suburban Farnham, Boris Williams began a journey that would unexpectedly lead him to the heart of one of the most prominent post-punk bands of the day. Early career Boris Williams spent nearly a decade quietly honing his craft in the British music industry, where drums were more than background noise and had a profound impact on feeling and identity. Boris became known as a nameless professional drummer with great technique in the early 1980s, when punk faded and new wave and synth pop ruled the charts. Ability to read sheet music, studio work knowledge, and readiness to help any artist that needed accurate, innovative, and never overbearing rhythm. Thompson Twins, a bright synth pop band with sophisticated electronic music, was one of his first major assignments. Boris played live drums and worked behind the scenes on sophisticated rhythm layers, weaving acoustic drumming with drum machine technology. Boris had the capability to hear through quiet, which developers said was necessary to balance human timing with machine precision. His reputation as the drummer who brings things alive was quiet. Next followed a time with Kim Wilde, a British new wave rising singer whose successes like Kids in America gave her pop legitimacy, but sought greater musical expression. Instead of interviews or image makeovers, Boris gave her songs a rhythmic foundation that felt less mechanical and more expressive. His drumming on Love, Blonde, and House of Salome flowed with the vocalist, bringing emotional depth that his contemporaries couldn't equal. Boris met Roger O'Donnell, a keyboardist who would subsequently join The Cure and their side project Bob Carr. During this time, the vision was shared. Music shouldn't overwhelm. Space, silence, and invitation should be provided. In 1984, The Cure, on the verge of global fame, experienced sudden turbulence. Following a series of personal outbursts, including hotel room vandalism and management conflicts, drummer Andy Anderson was fired. Robert Smith feared canceling gigs in America unless a replacement was found promptly mid-tour. Boris was scheduled when a sound engineer recommended him. A 20-song set list was learned in 3 days, including surprising songs like Charlotte Sometimes, The Walk, and 100 Years, and performed flawlessly live. At his November 1984 Minneapolis debut, no one noticed that the man behind the enormous drum kit was new. No introduction, no spotlight. Boris entered The Cure similarly to his music career, discreetly but irreplaceably. After that, he wasn't just waiting for a band. He was guiding The Cure's global emotional stream of darkness and beauty. He performed all this without speaking. The Cure's prime. The Cure were hard to define. Their lineups changed frequently, and their sound ranged from existential melancholy to playful pop. Something unusual happened when Boris Williams joined in 1984. Stability returned to The Cure after years. A drummer who enhanced Robert Smith's crazy talent. Boris debuted on 1985's The Head on the Door. A breakthrough for The Cure, taking them beyond Gothic to a more complex and accessible musical universe. His drumming made In Between Days and Close to Me feel alive. Critics and fans noticed then. Strange things were happening in The Cure's rhythm section. 2 years later, Kiss Me, Kiss Me, Kiss Me, 1987, marked the band's most vivid and daring era. A double CD of kaleidoscope, funk jazz, flamenco, and ambient shoegaze. Boris kept everything together. In Why Can't I Be You, his drumming was playful. It sounded desert-like in If Only Tonight We Could Sleep. Hypnotic, slow, mysterious. He built the oral framework of every song, but Disintegration, The Cure's best album, was his peak in 1989. Boris considered it sacred. Each rhythm in Pictures of You, Fascination Street, and Prayers for Rain is essential. Not flashy or sophisticated, yet each strike had an unmistakable emotion. It was music felt as well as heard. Boris was the only drummer that could do that without overplaying. Boris maintained a near-meditative focus despite internal turbulence, escalating renown, and a band that often tried to outrun itself. He kept the spiritual and musical beat while others struggled with burnout or substance abuse. He was called the band's grown-up by Robert Smith, having grown up among a group of wild artists. Boris's final band record, Wish, 1992, showed his maturity. Friday, I'm in Love went global. Bright and cheerful, virtually the opposite of The Cure's sadness. Boris's steady, laid-back drumming grounded the song in the band's melancholy DNA. It's rare in rock to drum for the song rather than to stand out. 10 years. For historic studio albums, hundreds of live shows, and numerous immortal recordings. The Cure's golden age was anchored by Boris Williams, who never appeared on stage. Only when the band went through a rough patch did people comprehend. Boris's stillness and stability protected The Cure's world from falling apart. When the Wish World Tour ended in 1993, The Cure faced a major decision. Rising internal tensions. Experimental and electronic music was emerging. In order to rebuild the band, frontman Robert Smith wanted to demolish existing infrastructure. Boris Williams also decided to stop spinning. There was no big statement or interview explaining his departure. Boris left. He left The Cure in 1994 after exactly a decade as their regular drummer. Fans were surprised, but those who worked with him understood. Boris was a wise artist who left not because he disagreed, but because he no longer fit the new tone. Robert Smith revealed in a rare interview that Boris disliked the band's new direction. He felt music was losing its living space as it became too digital. Yes, I understood. Boris didn't pursue high-profile projects or prove his commercial relevance after departing. He returned to music for personal reasons. He studied tabla, an Indian percussion instrument, to reconnect with rhythm spiritually. He wrote peaceful world and ambient music without lyrics, guided by feeling rather than form. Boris, lifelong friend Roger O'Donnell, and singer Caroline Crawley, previously of Shelley and Orphan, formed Babacar, a modest, self-directed musical project with no commercial goal, in the late 1990s. Their 1998 album Babacar was a planet apart. Soulful, introspective, and haunting. Though it didn't chart, critics and fans saw it as confirmation that Boris was an artist, not merely a drummer. Even after The Cure released Bloodflowers 2000 and returned from massive tours, he declined repeated reunion offers. For Boris, that chapter ended. His goal was to live his life quietly, resolutely, and without looking back. Boris replied, "I didn't leave because I hated them," when asked why he never returned to the treatment. "After giving everything I had, I left to relax and listen to myself." Boris Williams had the guts to leave glory, not out of pride, but authenticity to his art. He again retreated and let quiet speak for him. In a business where every personal detail can be used for entertainment, Boris Williams was one of the few musicians who maintained near-total seclusion. No scandals, extensive interviews, social media, or family, spouse, or child biographies. Nearly everything about his private life comes from coworkers, and they know little. Boris was quiet but sensitive, according to his longtime Cure and Babacar bandmate Roger O'Donnell. He wasn't partying or seeking attention on tour. Not because he was aloof, he often sat alone with a book or headphones listening to old recordings, but because he knew that true music demands inner quiet to be communicated honestly. Boris maintained emotional distance during the Cure's months-long tours, not to isolate himself, but to protect his inner space. While the band struggled with substance abuse, emotional issues, and creative differences, Boris was the only one who never had to defend or condemn anyone. Boris's romances remain unknown. He skipped fan conventions, retrospectives, documentaries, and sentimental interviews. Boris kindly declines fans' attempts to bring him back. He seems to think some artists should be remembered by music, not visual. Cure followers consider him a legend for his silence. A faceless shadow in album credits, usually invoked by music. Every time reunion rumors circulate, fans wonder, will Boris return? Even though they know he won't. Boris told a studio friend, "I don't need fame. Just somewhere to hear true sound." In a world where artists are louder, Boris Williams established a presence no applause could reach. A musician who never fit in. Because of such, he is remembered more than most. Influence and legacy. The Cure is generally associated with Robert Smith's untamed hair and sorrowful voice. Lost generation symbol. Few recognize that Boris Williams quietly established a solid foundation over a decade for those gloomy tunes to fly. The thread that kept everything together was his drumming, which never demanded attention. Boris was shaping mood from the doorhead to Wish, not just keeping time. The drifting tom rolls in Fascination Street, the trembling drum whispers in Lullaby, or pictures of You's delicate pulse. All of them had a lively, poetic, almost cinematic cadence. Not just background music, it was the Cure's heartbeat. When replacing Boris, many drummers, including Jason Cooper, had to relearn everything. Not because Boris's technique was difficult, but because every beat felt real and sensitive. An interview from 2004 stated that Jason didn't play like a drummer. He played drums like poetry. Every stillness mattered. Each beat was emotional. I realized I couldn't emulate him after years of trying. Even Robert Smith, the band's founder, lead singer, and soul, couldn't replicate Boris's vibe. After Boris left, the albums were good, but listeners noticed a quiet, weighted undercurrent missing. Longtime followers still sing Boris's name at live shows years after he left. Boris's impact beyond the Cure. Boris's passionate drumming influenced Interpol, editors, and The National during the 2000s post-punk boom. In an age of digital drumming, his rhythm was a reminder. Life in each blow can move people more than precision. The interesting thing is that Boris never sought recognition despite the growing admiration. No reprints, memoirs, or anniversaries. He knew his most treasured legacy was already ringing each night in the hearts of those who felt alone. So he didn't need to be the center of nostalgic tributes. Boris Williams was more than a drummer for everyone who's ever silently listened to Disintegration, found themselves in the massive drums of the same deep sea as you, or breathed in sync with Plainsong. He told stories without words, and sometimes the silent ones leave the greatest echoes. Current life. Boris Williams, 68, has not returned to the Cure. He lives in calm anonymity because he feels some chapters in life should be closed, not out of bitterness or cutting links with the past. He has no social media, no retrospectives, and few people know where or with whom he lives. He hasn't necessarily disappeared. Boris launched Vampirator with Jammer Tale in 2024, surprising the music community. The debut album Age of Loneliness resonated like a personal statement without a big rebound or media frenzy, where the drums directed his emotional journey rather than supporting someone else's vision. Again, Boris did not shout. He let music talk. Boris works quietly yet steadily in 2025. He appeared on Indie Pop Podcast on C86 in February. His post-Cure artistic journey and musical philosophy. Boris's minimalist yet mesmerizing motoric drums was featured in in-depth interviews with V13.net and Post-Punk Monk, who examined Age of Loneliness tunes. He may perform in Italy for the first time since the 1990s, according to close sources. There is no celebration or attempt to recapture glory. Boris lives and creates on his own terms, serene, profound, and unconcerned with being understood. He has never attempted to prove anything, because his music has always done that for him. Boris Williams may not have solo hits, post-band tours, or a personal brand, but when you listen to Pictures of You on a Lonely Night, you think, without that drumbeat, this song would never be the same. In a world where everyone shouts to be heard, Boris stepped back and left a deeper echo than any spoken word. How do you view Boris Williams' quiet but strong journey? The Cure song that best reminds you of him? Leave a comment and like and subscribe to keep reading about artists who quietly alter the world.